Sometimes families will ask, hey, what's a good college for a student with ADHD or a student on the autism spectrum? And it's really not that cut and dry because your diagnosis, your label doesn't define you. And some students, a lot of students I work with are autistic. Some of them have particular challenges with social interactions, but some of them are really more challenged by academic things like managing their time and keeping track of their assignments. And for other students, it might be independent living skills. They've never been away from home. They don't know how to cook or do laundry or manage money very well. So you've got to look at, which are the areas where I could use the most help and which programs really target those issues. So I steer folks to colleges that have different support programs, or sometimes support programs that are not necessarily part of the college, but that a student can use while they're in college. And some of those programs have a more mental health focus. So if a student is really struggling or has struggled in high school with depression or anxiety, we might be looking for a program that has strong support in that area. Whereas if, let's say, a student has real issues with reading social cues, making friends, they may want to be in a college that has a support program that targets that.
So during the research process, I think it's really important to ask questions of oneself, but also ask questions of the college. Asking the student self would be, where do I like to study? What is my routine like? The other piece I think is really important for the college search process is the transparency of costs. Sometimes there's a tiered fee-based system associated with certain LD supports. Asking that up front. I think it's really important that the admissions offices are clear about that, the support offices are clear about that, and the families, as they're doing their research. Another question to ask is, what kind of relationship does a student want to have with their teachers or their professors? I joke with our students here, because we have a very small school, that any college is bigger than the high school they're coming from. But there is still a very big difference between a large state university with 400 people in your freshman intro class versus a small liberal arts school of maybe 25 to 30 students in a class. One is not better or worse for a student who has an LD. It's just different. And then the third thing that I would really like to touch on in terms of research and preparation is what kind of transition programs are there. I think it's really important, and I'm noticing a lot of colleges doing more of this lately, is their orientation and their retention-based programs. So what systems are in place at the colleges if a student starts to struggle? And this goes for any student. It's not just students who learn differently. And what steps are the colleges taking to acclimate students to college and to make services available for all students, and especially students who might have an attentional or an executive functioning difficulty. Knowing what supports are there if they do run into trouble is going to be important in advance, because parents, teachers, we're not there anymore when they go to college. It's really on them to advocate and say, something's up, I need to get some help.
Something else that can be really important in your search is thinking about the size of the different resource centers. So for example, at a larger school, like a school that has 15,000 undergraduates, for example, you might have a resource center for disability services that has a staff of 6, for example. And that staff of 6 can fill a lot of different roles. They might be student-facing, so they're the ones who are actually providing accommodations, supporting students navigating questions with faculty, making sure that their day-to-day academics are very accessible. It also might mean that there is a technology coordinator who's helping to support students who need tech support on campus related to their diagnoses, related to the accommodations that they receive. There also might be an exam coordinator. So by having a larger office at times, you can have more opportunity for connection with different folks within a given office. Conversely, with a smaller school, say a liberal arts college that has about 2,000 students, for example, you may have a scenario where that disability services office might be an office of one or two, which can be absolutely fine and completely fill the needs of the students. However, it might feel different, it likely will, because the number of staff in the office is smaller. With a smaller school like that, however, there will be a different kind of community feel that's available for students to really take advantage of the tighter knit community within the student community, within their relationships with faculty and with other staff, with other resources on campus. And so there's pros and cons.
I think it's really important for all students to examine various options for college, not just selective four-year institutions. I think there is a tremendous wealth of higher education that is basically at the fingertips of all of our students. So for students who learn differently, especially, sometimes a two-year or an open admission community college or junior college might suit their needs as they're trying to figure out what major they want, or really settle into that additional independence and self-advocacy if they're worried about moving away from home, for example. I think it's phenomenal. I think we've got tremendous trade institutions and trade programs out there. And a lot of the things we've mentioned about accommodations and disability access and services actually hold true at two-year colleges and at trade schools as well. So when I speak to my students about college and life after high school, we absolutely include two-year, four-year trade programs, gap year programs, and there's a variety of programs out there to really support students on where they are now and push them accordingly for what they need. Oftentimes with the open admissions community college models, they have very skilled supervisors and academic advisors who can really help students incrementally gain that independence.